edition. I once had the extreme privilege of meeting and actually drinking with the current world chess champion, Magnus Carlsen. And it's a pretty random story, but Magnus Carlsen is one of the best chess players of all time, if not the best. In my mind, he basically has to beat Kasparov. Kasparov has some records that Magnus has not beaten, but he very well may. And for a chess nerd like me, meeting such a legend and actually even getting to hang out with him was and is just absolutely amazing. So I thought I'd share that story with you. This story takes place in Oslo, in Norway. I am Danish and I live in Denmark. It's part of Scandinavia. It's very close to Norway. They practically speak the same language in Norway as we do in Denmark. That is actually because at one point Denmark ruled basically all of Scandinavia and particularly Norway for a long time. And because of that, everybody in Norway had to learn Danish because all the educational material was or were in Danish. So slowly the Danish language sort of became the new Norwegian language. And then they sort of took revenge on us for that misdeed by speaking our language much more beautiful than we do. I'm not very good with accents, but the King's Gambit in Danish is called Kongegambit, and if you say it with the Norwegian inflection, it's more like Kongegambit, and it's like they put swag to it, they put melody to it, and even though I of course believe in the superiority of my own country, I don't really, but all the countries in Scandinavia we all have this sort of brotherly relationship where we have to claim we are the best all the time, even though of course Denmark is the best country. I have to admit that the way they speak Danish or New Norwegian, it is more beautiful than we do. Anyways, it's easy to get to Norway from here, and I had a chess friend there a couple of years ago that I wanted to meet, and me and one of my Danish friends who is not a chess guy, we went to Oslo for a weekend trip. And she had texted me and said, we should meet at this place. There's this really cool place called The Good Night. And let me tell you, that is, for a chess fan, that is a cool place. It is a very cool bar, very nice interior, very nice selection of craft beer. Toilets are nice. It's clean. It's spacey. There's just nothing wrong with it. And in addition to all of this, it's made by a team of true chess lovers. So you can buy chess books there, all kinds of rare chess books you wouldn't see anywhere else necessarily. For instance, the sort of obscure murder mystery comic book, Magnus Carlsen and the Chess Killer, that I actually did a couple of videos on. I got that actually on this particular night. I got that from that bar. You can buy chess sets there, chess clocks. There are chess sets in most of the tables. You can go up to the bar and just get very nice quality chess sets, chess pieces, chess boards, chess clocks that you can just borrow for free. And everybody there are playing chess. And it's a big place. So when I was there, I came in there, it looked like the most amazing chess club in the world. And because chess is, and I can't emphasize this enough, chess is absolutely huge in Norway. Like you have no idea. I came to this trendy bar. There were exclusively, almost exclusively at least, young people there. And there were about 50-50 guys and girls, which you will not see in most chess clubs, sadly, because of this very unfortunate idea that seems to persist, even though we are a lot of people who are trying to combat it, that chess is somehow a man's game. I mean, even after Judith Polgar, even after the Queen's Gambit Netflix series, there's still this idea that it's, for some reason, for no reason whatsoever, a man's game. It used to be a woman's game, actually, when it was the aristocrats that played in medieval Europe. It was sort of considered a supreme ladylike thing to do, to play chess. So the noble ladies, when they had enough of polite conversation, they would retreat to their quarters and play chess, because it didn't require any physicality, which was seen as the masculine thing to do. If it's a physical thing, it's a purely intellectual thing, and that was the realm of the feminine gender at that point in time. So I don't know when it changed. I'd like to actually figure that out, when it changed and it became sort of a man's game. So sad, but not in Norway. And there was just this 50-50 split, and there were, like, I think a lot of Tinder dates, a lot of first dates there. And I mean, how amazing of an activity is that for a first date? Let's meet at the place where they have awesome beer and play chess. And I was at the place with my non-chess friend who had expressed some interest in learning chess. So we were sitting at a table waiting for our friend, and we would play. I would give him queen outs, so I would take the queen away, and we would play like this. And I would try and explain why I did certain stuff and come with suggestions and try to, basically like I try to teach you guys the basics of the game, how to get to a point where you can enjoy the game. And then I hear my friend's voice saying, "Hey, I'm here," and I look up and I recognize my friend, and I'm about to say hello when I see Magnus freaking Carlsen approaching. And apparently they had, I don't know, met in a chess club or something. I'm not sure how, but now they apparently knew each other. And she was going to surprise me by introducing me, the biggest chess nerd on the planet, to the freaking world chess champion. And guys, I don't know if you follow chess. I don't know if you have any idea how amazing of a chess player Magnus Carlsen is. But this guy is bananas. I mean, he has the record for the longest unbeaten streak in professional chess. And before him, the record was 100 games in tournament chess. He was a grandmaster. But a lot of his opponents were like 2300, 2200. I mean, not pushovers, but It's not the kind of players Magnus plays against. And when Magnus beat that unbeaten streak, he did it against only grandmasters, and well, Magnus basically almost exclusively play 2700 plus ELO rated super grandmasters, and he didn't lose a game for 2 years or 128 games, completely obliterating the previous record. And I mean, people talk about Capablanca, who didn't lose a game for 8 years, which is extremely impressive also, but he played a total of 68 games, I believe, in those 8 years. So it's not quite the same as just showing up to work almost every day, Magnus Carlsen, and just not losing to Anish Giri, Wesley So, Levon Aronian, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Vishy Anand, like any of these top guys, just not losing for 128 games. And that's just one of the accolades he has. He is unbelievable. So I look up, and all of this, just races. It's just racing through my mind, right? And then he's like doing a gesture, like he's going to wave or say hello or something. And then he looks at the chessboard. And I don't know if you've noticed this, if you watch him on streams and whatever, if every time there is a chessboard in his line of sight, he sort of gets the laser focus in just about a second, where he just scans the board. I think it's like he can't help it. And he just makes like this really weird face, because our position doesn't make any sense, because I was playing without a queen, so of course it looked really weird. And then I didn't even say hello first. My first words to the world chess champion was, "Oh, we're playing queen odds." And then he nodded and he was like, "Oh, that makes sense." So that's also like a testament to the absolute brilliance that is Magnus Carlsen. He can look at a chessboard for a second, then he can see this position doesn't make any sense, and then when he explained that we are playing queen odds, he can see how that position could have arisen from a stronger player playing queen odds against a weaker player. It's just bananas. Well, anyways, we were invited to the champions table, where that was not like a VIP table or anything. Here it was just like he had his entourage with him. It's like when you see the hip hop crews, when you see 50 Cent go to somewhere, like he always has an entourage with him, and Magnus has like a bunch of people with him. And I thought that okay, it's interesting how chess is so popular in Norway, but people apparently they just leave him alone here. So he's this huge mega star, but nobody's coming to bother him. And that's later I found out that was a quirk of this particular bar, because we actually went to a nightclub later, and I'll explain to you what happened there. It was a different experience, let me tell you that. Okay, so we sit there, we sit down. I'm of course like starstruck, I guess is the term. It's Magnus Carlsen, and he's right there. It's not like an interview. It's not even in a chess context. I mean, there were chessboards, and they were playing chess, and they were playing like all kinds of Bockhaus and sort of chess variants, and just having a laugh and having some beer. And I was I was sat next to Grandmaster David Howell, who was one of Magnus's friends and who was like he's a top player. I think he has been number 30 on the world rankings, and he's, I think, 2670 right now. And he was such a cool guy, by the way. Like, he quickly noticed, okay, there's this Danish guy, he doesn't know anybody really of us, so he just made sure that I was welcome, that I were introduced to people, and I even got to play him. And if you haven't tried playing a Super Grandmaster, I can share my experience playing against Grandmaster David Howell. When I say Grandmaster, he's not your average 2500 GM. He's been 2700, he's almost 27, like he won gold at the Chess Olympiad. So here's what it's like. We played, first we played just 3 minutes versus 3 minutes. And if you imagine, this is not going to be very ASMR, like, I'm sorry. If you imagine running full speed, all you can, into like a brick wall. The wall doesn't move. It doesn't even really notice that you are there. I got crushed. So then he did what I had done to my friend earlier. We played queen odds. I had white pieces, he just took his queen away. Played 3 minutes versus 3 minutes. I lost on time. I still technically had a winning position, but it was like I was up a pawn in the exchange, which is not the same as being up a queen. It's tough. I've played like normal grandmasters before, and that's not the same. Like, there's the next level, the super GM level. It's just, and the last thing we did was we played 3 minutes. I had 3 minutes, he had 20 seconds. 20 seconds. I lost, and I think he had like 7 or 8 seconds when he checkmated me. And the experience is extremely intimidating. Like, you make a move, as soon as you start moving the hand, his hand will start to hop over the board, and he knows what the move is going to be, and he knows the perfect response. So when you pick up your piece, and as soon as you let go, he picks it up, and your hand is going to the clock, and he moves like lightning, like lightning. This is a guy who has played bullet chess, speed chess his whole life, right? Like lightning. Let's go of the point, and you press the clock, click, and the second, like, it goes like click, 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 click. He doesn't spend a second. He spends maybe a fourth of a second of his time making a move most times. And I got crushed as well. And all the while, Magnus and all his friends, they're still there, and just talking about different stuff, and there were not a lot of strong players there. Magnus is one of, apparently, David and Magnus are close friends, and David is a very, very strong player. But the rest of the guys, from what I could understand, they were just people from his chess club where he played when he was a kid. And they were just, most of them were like my strength. But they were just his friends, and it was very wholesome and cool. And then they were like, okay, we had some beers, and they were like, let's go to a club. And that's where stuff changed a little bit. So I had noticed that Magnus was reserved, I would say, even for a Danish person or for a Norwegian person. With there's a reserved people, but even for our standards, Scandinavian standards. He was quite reserved, bordering on what you could call arrogant if you really wanted to. And I had a hard time exactly figuring out what that was about, because like he had invited me over, so I guess it was all cool, but and then we went to the club, and then I understood what it was about. So it's a fancy club we go to. There's no line, nothing. Like it's Magnus. You just come in. All the friends just come in, no problem. And we go to the place and find a table. We sit down. I guess we're like 12 people or something. And then I learned that the reason that nobody had bothered him at the chess bar, the good night, that was because though the people there were used to Magnus coming to that bar. Apparently that's where he usually goes before he goes to town, goes out clubbing or whatever. And they sort of know, to leave him alone. Here it was very different. Very, very, very different. We were like these 12 people and just drinking beer, listening to the music, not really dancing or anything, just, being a little loud, being a little rowdy, having a good time, sharing war stories. And every 5 minutes, I kid you not, every 5 minutes, there would either come a guy who wanted to have a picture with Magnus, or there would come a girl or girls who wanted to have his phone number, or, sit down beside him, like, while he was talking to somebody, like, kind of pushy, just, hey, I just want to, like I guess a dream scenario for the single person. But at first I thought, okay, then I'm not single, but if that would have been cool when I was single, if the girls were just throwing themselves at me like that. But we were there for hours, and like I got claustrophobia or whatever it's called, just watching it. Like he got swarmed again and again. Like when he went up to have a beer from the bar, somebody would come. Like when he went to have a piss, somebody would come. And then I kind of understood that he's not reserved and arrogant because he doesn't like people. Because when he's engaged, when he spoke to me, and we didn't speak a lot, like I'm not his best friend or anything. Maybe he won't even remember me if he sees me again. But when he's engaged in conversation, he's all smiles and polite and cool. It's just it seems to me he has to put on sort of a dismissive facade in order to simply not to simply be allowed to hang out a little bit with his friends. It's crazy. And I mean, I did speak to him a little bit. I unfortunately didn't get to play him. It would have been so cool to be able to say that I have lost in chess to the world champion. Our conversation, I'm afraid, wasn't particularly interesting. It was mostly me saying, I'm a big fan of you, what you do for chess. I'm a fan of your chess, but I'm also a fan of what you do for chess, because you go on podcasts, you go on TV shows, you're not afraid to show who you are, you're not afraid to show your personality, you're not afraid to just be drunk on stream, flipping the camera off when you crush an opponent because you're just drunk and hanging out with your friends, and sort of shaking up the chess world and setting a new standard. I think that's and he was polite and said thank you and stuff, and that was about it. The only thing left was that I had a beer too many, I guess, and so I went to get a cab, and it was raining. It was like crazy heavy rain, right? Crazy heavy rain. So as soon as I signaled the cab, it starts, and then I see, as soon as I have signaled it, I see Magnus coming out, also signaling the same cab that is now going towards me, and I can see the driver, and I swear he saw Magnus, and he was like, "Oh, I should have waited just one more second. I would much rather drive Magnus somewhere than this random guy." But I got the trip, and I don't think Magnus and his friends had to wait too long for the next cab. Okay, so that's my story of how I met Magnus Carlsen. Let me know in the comments if you appreciate this kind of stuff here. I thought maybe I should show a game he played. I'm really getting into Magnus Carlsen's chess development these days, and and there's this amazing miniature where he played Jon Ludvig Hammer, or John Ludwig Hammer, who's about, I think, a year older than he is or something, and they've been working together all their life. He's a grandmaster as well, and this game is quite old, and Hammer had the white pieces and opened with knight to f3, sort of a flexible move that you want to play this move in almost any opening, so it's very flexible. You can see if you can try to trick your opponent into going into some opening setup that may be uncomfortable for them, where you know a little bit more. Magnus played d6, d4, and Magnus played knight f6. So the knight here on f6 is looking at the e4 square, saying to the white king, "Hey, white king, you can't play e4." So it's all about this move, just taking this option away for white, which is why Hammer played knight on b to d2, so that he now can play e4 protected by the knight. Usually you want your knight on c3. It accomplishes the same goal, but with the knight on c3 you don't really have the option of pushing this c-pawn to c3 or c4, and in some opening strategies that is very important for you to do, and that is the kind of opening that Hammer is trying to get into. So he plays knight to d2. We then saw pawn to g6 from Magnus, a very standard sort of King's Indian period defense, modern defense type setup. I don't know the name of this particular variation, but the idea is quite simple. You put the bishop on g7, it's on the long diagonal. You can castle, you can have the bishop protecting the dark squares, the pawns protecting the light squares, and have a very safe king and an active bishop. So after pawn to g6, we saw e4, that was prepared on the previous move. Bishop g7, also prepared on the previous move. And now bishop to d3 by white, further protecting this pawn, also potentially looking at the kingside castle position here, where we can maybe launch an attack at a later time. The king castles and the king castles. So now both sides of castles. So you can see very logical flow to everything that both sides have done so far. Now we see knight to c6. So we are not going into any, we're not trying to back into any kind of Sicilian dragon or anything, like not trying to do something like play c5 here. It doesn't work apparently, or at least Magnus liked the opening system with knight to c6 better. This looks at the d4 pawn, currently protected by the knight on f3, but one advantage of putting the other knight here on d2 was that in a situation like this, white can simply play pawn to c3, further solidifying the pawn here on d4. So just having a very nice solid center here. Guy like Magnus, of course, can't accept having an unchallenged center. Having the control of the center is extremely important in chess. So Magnus challenges it right away with pawn to e5. And here we see maybe sort of the first little bit of a slip up maybe from Hammer. I'm not sure about the particular strength of his next move, h3. It's a very logical move. There is no knight jumps here to g4. The bishop can't come into g4 and pin the knight to the queen. And it seems that you absolutely have the time to do this, because you have the safe king, nicely castled. You have a lot of pieces developed, both knights, the bishop here, and you have this very strong center. Both pawns are protected twice. The e pawn by the bishop and the knight, and the d pawn by the other knight and this pawn. So maybe this move is absolutely fine, and it's his follow-up to Magnus's aggressive idea that he is going to unleash now. That's subpar. I'm not really sure the machines were, when I analyzed it, not completely sure exactly where the mistake really was, but we will see an attack materialize. So Magnus plays knight to h5. A little surprising maybe. So what is that about? What is that about? It's about this square here. The Kasparov's favorite square. Put a knight on f4 or f5 if you are playing with the knight, playing with the white pieces, and you will very often have a basis for a very strong attack. And it gets very, very tactical now. But you will see how this will become an octopus knight, and I'll talk about what that is when we get it. But if you can establish an octopus knight in your own games, you should try it out. It really works. It's a very powerful way to use the knight. Hammer captured here. So the first blood. Pawn on d takes e5. And it would be so intuitive to play knight takes or bishop takes the pawn. I think I would just snap play knight takes e5. Just looks so intuitive. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. Both bishops look good. You know, what could possibly be wrong with that? But the strongest move is what Magnus played. He played knight here, knight to f4. So this is an octopus knight. What does that mean? It means it has 8 arms, it attacks 8 squares, and most of these are really relevant. So it attacks the bishop. Bishop is undefended, has to move. It is looking at e2. On e2 it would be checking the king. That's relevant. It is looking at g2. There we, if we could teleport the queen in here, that would be checkmate. It is looking at h3, where it is working together with the light squared bishop. We could see, for instance, in sacrifice, bishop takes h3, pawn takes h3, knight takes h3, check. At some point there could arise a position where that could work out tactically. So the knight is just extremely strong here. And we see the downside in this opening of the knight on d2, because for all the good it does, it also has a drawback, and that is it is blocking in this bishop, and this bishop is therefore not able to come in and capture this knight. Okay, so what did Hammer do here? Well, the bishop here is attacked, so he moved it. Bishop b5. This attacks the knight, but Magnus had a very effective reply. Knight takes e5, getting out of the attack, winning back the pawn, and sort of stranding the bishop over here, not doing anything, and also being unprotected. And the bishop being unprotected is the key, because the brilliant ideas in this attack is coming up now. And I think maybe Carlsen was already thinking a little bit about the Anastasia checkmate, his favorite checkmate, and you will see it in the game here. Because he's setting it up very nicely. Hammer played knight takes knight. So knight on f3 takes e5. And what's a good move here? You can capture with the bishop, you can capture with the pawn. Both look very sensible, but they are not the strongest. The strongest is something else. So what would you play here? Would you play queen to g5? And now we start to see what it's about. So the octopus knight looking at g2. So that would be checkmate. So we're actually threatening checkmate. And if we try something like just playing pawn to g2, then perhaps just knight takes h3, no longer defended, check. I think that will just crumble. So Hammer played knight back here to g4, blocking the path of the queen, and now we can see the vulnerability of this bishop move. This bishop was baited out here earlier, and now Magnus can regain the lost material. He gave up the knight temporarily, got the bishop back. Now it's equal, but the queen is in an attacking position here, where it's more active than it was on d8. The knight here on f4 is of course extremely strong still. So it makes a lot of sense that Hammer wants to get rid of that. He therefore plays knight to b3, unleashing an attack from the bishop on the knight. Also being ready to maybe establish a strong knight in the center that would attack the queen. if it's chopped up by the bishop, you could recapture with the pawn, get a very strong pawn center. A lot of potential in the position. But look at this. With the queen here on b5, black is looking at the e2 square. The knight is also looking at the e2 square, as we discussed earlier. So now, knight e2, check to His Majesty. Cannot be captured by the queen because we would recapture. So it's check here. King has to move. King h1. And the attack rages on after king h1. Bishop takes knight, ready for a fight. Pawn takes bishop. I don't have a rhyme for that. I'm not that hip-hop. I'm not particularly good at freestyling. Sometimes when I freestyle, I lose confidence. Okay, that was very silly. Let's see. So, bishop takes knight, pawn takes knight. So now we have this pawn here on g4. And we see Magnus's very slick idea going for the Anastasia checkmate. Rook on a to e1, attacking the pawn. Here, he actually gave up the pawn. Doesn't seem to be a very easy way to defend it. So Hammer played bishop e3. Just saying it's okay, you can come in. Rook takes e4 and capture my pawn, that's okay. Because now he wants to play a rook to e8 and get rid of this pesky knight. Because where is this knight really going? Is it going here? Can be captured. Is it going here? Can be captured. And we have both the queen and the rook. It doesn't seem that there is a good way to save the knight. So how about we just don't? So what is the Anastasia checkmate? How is Magnus winning this? It's a checkmate in 2 moves. It's a queen sacrifice. It's queen check on h5. And Hammer resigned. There is one legal move here. I can show it. It's pawn takes queen. Always nice to sacrifice the queen. And then rook slides over. Maybe we should do it with the pinky. Can I do that? If you've read my 60 Memorable Games by Fischer, you will know what that is about. And that's it, checkmate. There's just, because of the Anastasia configuration with the knight here, taking away the escape square. The original Anastasia checkmate, the king would be here. And the point is that the knight is taking away both these squares. But it's still the same Anastasia checkmate pattern with the king here. It doesn't make any difference. And if you don't think that was too impressive of a game, let me remind you that this was played in 2003, and Magnus was 13 years old. He was 13 years old. He was rated 2,450 at the time, by the way. Very close to becoming a grandmaster at 30. So that is the game. I hope you liked it. I hope you had a good time. Let me know if you thought it was a good idea with the whole telling a story thing, or you think maybe that doesn't fit the channel so well. And yeah, I hope you have a very good time. I hope I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.